So I'm Christine Bold, and I teach in the School of English and Theatre Studies at the University of Guelph. As you can probably tell, I started my education in Scotland. I did my first degree at the University of Edinburgh, and I did my PhD at University College London in London, England. I came to Canada in 1984. I always remember because the date looms large in an Orwellian way, though actually for me 1984 was a very happy year. Very happy to be in Canada. I think I was very studious, to be honest. I think I was always attracted to perhaps what we would now call, I think, the popular and what we would now call the transnational, though I wouldn't have necessarily used those terms then. But I think I was always very attracted to the something other that really informed Scottish society. So, I mean, this was how I came to have a major research interest in the popular West, because it had such presence in Scotland. So many, pubs with Western themes, so many children playing cowboys and Indians, as with in other countries. John Wayne, such a big presence. Louis L'Amour as an author, best-selling author in Scotland. So I was really intrigued by the power of the popular, and in this case, because it's loomed so large in my society at the time, it came to be intrigued with the power of the popular West. The intersection between my research and my teaching is, I think, one of the most rewarding and significant parts of the job for me on my side of the table, but I also believe for students on their side of the table. So the ways in which I can do research, and for me that often means archival research, take not only the results of that research into the classroom, but also the questions that I have, and go further with the students. And I often find students obviously get excited by many different facets of studying within the English department, but one of the things that it feels that really does galvanise student work is archival contact. So working in the archives in our library for sure, but also working with digitised materials. And there is no doubt that, well, I believe the enthusiasm I bring helps, and the knowledge I bring helps the students refine what they do with those archival materials, but there's absolutely no doubt that the unexpected things that they do helps me, sort of opens my eyes to ways of thinking that had not occurred to me as a researcher. So I think first and foremost the research teaching continuum. And in the English programme at Guelph, it's unusual for allowing that connection to happen all through the curriculum, through the undergraduate curriculum and then in the graduate curriculum. And I think it's one of the engines that powers the quality of work going on in this programme. Yes, I think the impact is multiple. Perhaps to be a little grandiose, perhaps the most grandiose and in some ways ineffable impact has to do with an opening up of the intellectual and creative world. So that can be hard to quantify. I think it's not hard to quantify the results of that. I think that process, that kind of creative, intellectual, imaginative process makes itself felt in the clarity and passion with which students write, which is one of the many transferable skills, as they're known. The clarity and passion with which they not only speak, which is obviously very important to be able to present your work orally to multiple audiences, but also the way they ask questions. And I think that the ability to ask important, penetrating, clear questions is actually part, to return to the grandiose, is part of a healthy civic society. And I think that's a kind of fundamental skill that comes out of working with literary, textual, archival materials in the ways that our students do. I also think there is real value in the encounter with difference that happens all the time in this and other disciplines in the humanities. So to read a novel by an Indigenous author such as Louise Erdrich is to have a glimpse of how the world is experienced from that perspective. It is to, through entering into her imaginative world, it is to understand that life as humanly lived, that is translated onto the page, but it is an encounter with a human life that may be very different or may be very similar to your own. And so I think that, that there's a real learning that happens across borders, across lines of difference, whether that's difference with sexual orientation or racial makeup or gender or generation, any of the categories that many of us would think are important. I think there's a real entering into an encounter when the individual student and ourselves as groups in seminars and lectures think about, reflect on, work with what we discover through those imaginative acts that have been published. One of the pieces of advice that immediately comes to mind is to learn how to make this whole process, this educational process, your own. How to chart your path through it. Obviously this is with support and guidance of faculty members, of other students, of mentors of various kinds. Nevertheless, I think it really is important for students to work out what matters to them, why it matters to them, and how they can best continue to build their repertoire or their set of skills around that passion or around that thing that matters.